listening to Healthy House Calls with Angel, episode number 5. Hello, welcome to Healthy House Calls with Angel. I am your host, Angel Shannon, giving you tips, tools, and holistic strategies to live a healthier life by intentional design. Join me as we explore the landscape of lifestyle medicine, offering practical tips that help you eat, sleep, move, and live better, and help you become fit and functional for life. Thank you for tuning in. Enjoy the show. Hello. Welcome to Healthy House Calls with Angel and the Fit and Functional for Life community. I'm Angel Shannon, your host, and I want to welcome you to a community that believes that good health is so much more than just a normal physical and the weight on a scale. You guys know good health is also the sense of harmony, balance, peace, purpose, and fulfillment we feel in our lives. Now, if you're just tuning in to this podcast, if you're brand new to our community, here's what I need you to know. We are a community that believes first and foremost that health is the first wealth. And because of that, we declare our physical, mental, and spiritual well-being to be our single most important priority. We value knowledge, wisdom, and most importantly, personal transformation. We take our health into our own hands by being informed and empowered. We take action and we hold ourselves accountable. We prioritize rest, movement, mindfulness, optimal nutrition, and meaningful work that aligns with our life's purpose. In a nutshell, we are a community that desires to be fit and functional, not just for a day, not just for an event, but fit and functional for life. I am so excited about today's episode, guys. I've been working for the past month on my radical self-compassion for resilient living masterclass coming up August 5th. If you want the deets on this masterclass, which I know for sure you want the deets on this masterclass, jump on over to my website, sevahealthgroup.com. Okay, tune in to my mailing list, get on my mailing list. This is going to be the masterclass of all masterclasses. I had the joy and pleasure of speaking last month, June, for the Women Tech Network 2021 Global Conference. It was an awesome conference. And I spoke about radical self-compassion for resilient leadership. Awesome. Absolutely awesome conference. Had some great attendance on that program. And now I want to bring it to resilient living. This is a masterclass for anyone, everyone. Not just about leaders or leadership and business, but just about leading your life with resilience. Cannot wait for this masterclass coming up August 5th. So get on my mailing list. Jump on over to my website, sevahealthgroup.com. Click on the blog. You'll see the announcements there. And that leads me into why I am doing this episode of Mastering the Master Clock. Because it ties into what I'm going to be teaching in the masterclass about resilience, about stress, and about why one important thing is so important, and that's called the circadian rhythms. I want you to understand the science of circadian rhythms. I want you to understand how circadian rhythms are governing so many things in your life and in your health, and why getting mastery over your circadian rhythms is going to upgrade your life and your health so much. You know, if you're a listener who's struggling to lose weight, especially since being in quarantine for over a year, If you've celebrated one of those birthdays that end in 0, when the hormone production starts to wind down, I'm talking to my 40s and 50-year-olds here, okay, specifically, raising my hand because I'm in that age group. If you're having difficulty focusing, if you're having difficulty sleeping or feeling refreshed and focused, if you're feeling unproductive, this is your episode. I am talking specifically to you. Okay, I want you to sit down, strap in, get this information because this is going to change your life. Okay, circadian rhythms influence several important functions in our bodies. It influences when we wake up, when we're ready to go to sleep, our sense of hunger, satisfaction, our digestion, weight and body temperature, and most importantly, our hormones. You know, the average person has no idea that their hormones are fluctuating minute to minute, hour to hour. You know, there's nothing that turns on and says, hey there, I'm your hormones, I'm fluctuating. You know, we feel hungry, so we go and grab a snack. We feel hot, so we get a little bit of air condition. We cool off. We gain a few pounds and then we start Googling and signing up for all kinds of weight loss programs and meal plans and keto and Atkins and all this, you know, whatnot. And, you know, finding out what the latest diet is so that we can shed the pounds. But here's what we never stop to think about: making the connection between those things and circadian rhythm. So I want to jump into that. Let's go. Let's hit it. We got a lot of ground we need to cover today. Let's get some definitions and some science in place so we can get a really good foundation on what circadian rhythms are, why they matter, and what you need to do about it. Okay, so first, the definition. Chronobiology is the study of circadian rhythms. Now, circadian rhythms are physical, mental, and behavioral changes that follow a 24-hour cycle. Literally, that's what the word circadian means. It means that which occurs within a 24-hour period or cycle as a biological activity or function. Now, circadian rhythms are natural processes that respond primarily to light and dark, and they affect most living things, including animals, plants, microbes. The one example of a light-related circadian rhythm that we're all familiar with is sleeping at night and being awake during the day. Okay, sun goes down, it's dark out, we go to sleep, sun comes up, we're awake, we're good to go. Now, of course, it's much more complex than that, than the sun coming up and we wake up and the sun goes down and we go to sleep. We know that it's far more complex than that, involves centralized areas in the brain, which I'm going to talk about in just a moment. But it is the one circadian rhythm amongst thousands of circadian rhythms in the body that most of us are most familiar with. That's what we really want to drill down into and focus on today. So each of us has a biological clock. It's that natural timing device that basically regulates our circadian rhythms. And now circadian rhythms are it's that clock, so to speak, that's composed of specific molecules, proteins that interact with cells throughout the body. And what's interesting is that nearly every organ, every tissue has a biological clock, okay? So, lungs, kidneys, stomach, throughout the body, there are all these cells that have specific proteins that are contributing to the rhythm of your body, the rhythm of your digestion, the rhythm of your heart, the rhythm of all kinds of biological processes within the body. And these biological clocks all throughout the body are governed by the master clock in the brain, which keeps all of these individual clocks synchronized, okay? Now, in humans, the master clock is made up of 25,000 nerve cells. We call those nerve cells neurons. And together, those nerve cells form a structure called the suprachiasmatic nucleus. Say that quickly. Suprachiasmatic nucleus, or SCN. Let's just make it simple. The SCN, okay? So the SCN, we believe, is located in a part of the brain called the hypothalamus. And basically, the SCN controls the production of melatonin, okay, as it relates to sleep regulation. It controls the production of melatonin after it receives direct input of light from the eyes. So kind of straightforward. Information comes in through the eyes as light, hits the optic nerve, relays information from the eye to the brain, okay? And then the SCN tells your brain, okay, hey there, I need you to make some melatonin. Melatonin is produced and we go on off to sleep. Now, how do we know all of this? Well, let's time travel back to 1729, when the first scientific observation of circadian rhythm was discovered. French astronomer Jean-Jacques Dortu de Marin, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, is considered the father of chronobiology research. Now, this is really interesting how this came about. This scientist, Jean-Jacques, was intrigued by the opening and closing of plant leaves. Now, I'm a plant lover, so I can appreciate that. He conducted an experiment to determine if this plant behavior of the opening and closing of plant leaves was related to the timing of the sun. So his experiment way back in 1729 was pretty straightforward. He placed what we believe was a Mimosa pudica plant. Don't know for sure because taxonomy was not in place at that time, but he placed this plant in a dark closet. He observed it and noted that without having any access to any access to sunlight, the plant still raised its leaves during the day and they drooped down during the night. And this experiment of his ultimately demonstrated the possible existence of a circadian rhythm that was potentially derived, so he believed, from an endogenous clock. Now, the word endogenous means something on the inside. And he shared those findings with a fellow researcher who later had the findings published in the Proceedings of the Royal Academy of Paris. Okay. And he wrote up something really interesting, which is that, and I'm going to read this as a direct quote, "It is well known that the most sensitive of the heliotropes turns its leaves and branches in the direction of the greatest light intensity. This property is common to many other plants, but the heliotrope is peculiar in that it is sensitive to the sun or the time of day in another way. The leaves and stems fold up when the sun goes down in just the same way as when it touches or agitates the plant." So in a nutshell, Jean-Jacques' experiment revealed some pretty interesting findings. One, that light is not necessary for the oscillations of the plant's leaves and branches along the day and night cycle. And two, that these oscillations, or opening and closing, persisted in the absence of light. Now, they were careful about some of the conclusions that they came to, but it led to more interesting research. And they drew an interesting parallel with sick people because they were interested in knowing if people can feel the day or night without seeing the light. Okay. So that kind of set the stage for loads and loads of research in the area of chronobiology. Now, let's keep time traveling fast forward to the 20th century when three researchers, Jeffrey Hall, Michael Rosbash, and Michael W. Young, won the Nobel Prize in 2017. Also for their research in chronobiology, this time though, not in plants, but in fruit flies. Here's what's also funny. Their discovery led to the understanding that fruit flies have a very similar genetic makeup to humans. Who would have known that? Okay. Their research, though they won the prize in 2017, their research really did date way back to the 1980s when they were able to isolate a very specific gene or set of genes that dictate biological clock activity inside all living organisms. Now, what they knew going into their studies is that all organisms operate on a 24-hour circuit that governs, like I said earlier, critical functions in the body: blood pressure, heart rate, hormone levels, metabolism. Hello, metabolism, 40s and 50s, sleep, and even behavior, all in time with shifts between day and night. Now, with these fruit flies, they discovered, listen to this, they discovered that insects who lacked these genes also lost the ability to self-regulate biological functions. And when the gene was replaced, those regulations came back. Okay, so for humans, two of the most important genes that have been discovered are the cryptochrome and period genes. Now, period not having anything to do with menstrual cycle, just the word period. These genes code for proteins that build up in the cell, in the nucleus of the cell at night and lessen during the day. Isn't this fascinating? Isn't it fascinating? Studies in these fruit flies suggest that these proteins, when they build up, okay, activate alertness and wakefulness. Conversely, just the opposite. When these proteins decline, sleepiness and restfulness, okay? But signals from the environment may alter this protein release and affect circadian rhythms. So, for instance, when the body turns on these genes, the cryptochrome and period genes, exposure to light at a different time of day can reset. So what does this mean? This means people who are shift workers, exposure to light during the night versus during the day can change the circadian rhythm. Okay, we know this, right? So this research, both from the 1700s as well as from modern 20th century, has been crucial to understanding how light affects our well-being, how these circadian rhythms affect our well-being and keep the overall internal timekeeping system in place. Another really fascinating thing is that these ties, this genetic research has also shown that various chromosome changes, various chromosomes can increase our susceptibility to sleep disorders. They've identified sites on various chromosomes that can increase our susceptibility to sleep disorders. So what am I talking about when I say sleep disorders? I'm thinking about narcolepsy, restless leg syndrome, sleep phase disorders, tying all of this into circadian rhythms and health and metabolism. So why is getting your circadian rhythm regulated so important? Two answers: mood and metabolism. Okay, so first let's talk about metabolism, because I started off with just talking about weight gain and stress and things like this. First, let's talk about metabolism. And to do that, we need to mention three important hormones: leptin, ghrelin, and orexin. Now, hold on. Here's some more fascinating science. The part of your brain that controls appetite is believed to be in the arcuate nucleus of the hypothalamus. Now, that's a part of your brain. And it's influenced and regulated by two important hormones called leptin and ghrelin. Leptin is an appetite suppressant. It's produced by adipose tissue, basically suppresses the appetite. Okay, I'm not hungry. Suppresses appetite. Ghrelin is released from the stomach primarily in response to fasting, and it promotes the feeling of hunger. So as you can see, they are opposing hormones. Leptin says, I am not hungry, appetite suppressant. Ghrelin says, I am hungry, I need to eat. Countless studies have shown that sleep deprivation, no matter what the cause, whether it be narcolepsy, whether it be a sleep disorder, sleep apnea, doesn't matter. Sleep deprivation and disruption of circadian rhythms can lead to metabolic dysregulation. So I'm talking about complete upset of your metabolism. Poor sleep is positively associated with increased oxidative stress, blood sugar intolerance, which is a precursor to diabetes, insulin resistance. And remember, insulin is the hormone that's responsible for the utilization of sugar, okay, carbs, all right? Anytime there is more time spent awake, there is also more time, there's an increased opportunity to eat, okay? So that's just basic, all right? And sleeping less can actually disrupt the timing and release of these two critical hormones, leptin and ghrelin, which, of course, if there's disruption in the feeling of hunger versus the feeling of satiety or satisfaction, clearly that can cause disruption in weight, okay? Now, I mentioned a minute ago a hormone called orexin. Orexin sits in between the two hormones that I just mentioned, sits in terms of responsibility. Orexin is a neuropeptide. It's a protein-like substance that's secreted by the brain. It is responsible for regulating that wakefulness, appetite, and arousal, okay? There are tens of thousands of neurons in the lateral hypothalamus of the human brain that secrete orexin, okay? So how does orexin work? All right, let's get the overall picture. The secretion of orexin is influenced by those two opposite hormones. The first being leptin. So leptin's duty is to prevent the person from overeating by reducing orexin secretion, okay? And then the second is the ghrelin that I mentioned, the digestive hormones that's secreted when the stomach is empty. So ghrelin increases orexin secretion, causing an increase in appetite, and then leptin does just the opposite, decreases orexin secretion, saying that, doing just the opposite, as I just said. Now, the other fascinating thing about orexin is that it regulates metabolic activity and its speed. Orexins are responsible for regulating circadian rhythms, the daily sleep-wake cycle, especially by helping us stay awake. How does that happen? Check this out. Orexins help increase the secretion of dopamine, norepinephrine, histamine, and acetylcholine hormones, which are in charge of the proper function of daily sleep-wake cycle. You know these hormones, neurotransmitters. You know them, dopamine, norepinephrine, histamine, acetylcholine. All of those are in the brain, wakefulness. Remember what they are also tied into. They're tied into mood. Okay? Keep in mind, norepinephrine, another name for noradrenaline, it's a stress hormone that's released into the blood, also functions as a neurotransmitter, like I just said. It's produced in the adrenal glands. And guess what norepinephrine affects? The areas of the brain that are responsible for controlling your attention and your action. Connected to fight or flight, can increase the heart rate, release glucose. Okay, we need sugar when we're in an emergency. Our muscles need sugar, they need energy, increases the blood flow to skeletal muscles. Okay, norepinephrine, neurotransmitter, increases alertness, arousal. Okay, really super important in mood and the ability to concentrate. And as I'm talking about these neurotransmitters, I can't get away from this discussion without mentioning that GABA, okay? GABA is associated with sleep, muscle relaxation, sedation, norepinephrine and orexin, like I was just talking about, implicated in wakefulness, okay? And those other neurotransmitters that are impacted in sleep and wakefulness, as I said, acetylcholine, histamine, adrenaline, cortisol, serotonin. Remember, serotonin that makes you feel good. Dopamine makes you feel good when I'm running. I can just imagine all of the dopamine that's just pouring out of my brain because it feels so good, right? So who are we talking about again? Night shift workers, jet lag folks, stressed out, burnt out folks whose circadian rhythms are completely out of sync, creating a mismatch between the actual clock and the internal clock. And you know something? Here's another group of folks that I have to mention this impacts to. Seniors. Because As we age, our sleep drive changes. This is just a fact. As aging occurs, the internal clock begins to lose its consistency. And this is why those of us who care for older adults, who have older adults in our families, we will tend to see them, oftentimes with disrupted sleep cycles. Okay. At some point in their lives, because as we age, our sleep drive changes, and older adults tend to get tired earlier in the evening. They wake up earlier in the morning, less sleep overall. And one of the reasons this is really important in my clinical practice, where I treat a lot of behavioral health issues and concerns, particularly dementia and neurodegenerative diseases, is one of the first things I generally correct with my older adult population is sleep. And I don't even want to say just my older adult population. With every single client, every single coaching client, every single patient, it is one of my number one questions. How do you sleep? How do you sleep? How well do you sleep? Do you have trouble falling asleep and staying asleep? All those questions around sleep is really my way of investigating the circadian rhythm. Okay. And figuring out whether or not this circadian rhythm is off or needs fine tuning. So let's jump into that. What are the studies? Angel, what can I do? Now I know the science. What can I do? Number one recommendation for me in terms of lifestyle medicine for you, keep a sleep journal. First and foremost, keep a sleep journal. If you don't have a Fitbit or a wearable trackable device, if you just want to write down the hour that you go to sleep, the hour that you wake up, how well you feel, whether you're rested, not rested, whether there's disruptions in the middle of the night. Oh, I woke up, 2-3 times, what have you. That's one of the first ways that you can take control of your, circadian rhythms, or start investigating your circadian rhythms to figure out how this is impacting, help your clinician help you figure out how this is impacting your metabolism, your, weight gain, mood disorders, things like this. Okay. Because let's face it, if you're not getting a decent night's rest, if you're waking up 3, 4, 5 times a night, if you're having difficulty falling asleep and or staying asleep, do you really think you're going to be a pleasant person the next day? Probably not. So that is something you want to bring to the attention of your clinical provider, particularly, when you've got those issues that I mentioned earlier: weight gain, sluggishness, fatigue, feeling low down, feeling stressed. And people who are feeling burnt out, I am speaking to you. I want you to tune into this part when you talk to your clinical provider. You want to make a statement about your sleep. Okay, so we talked about that sleep journal being number one. Sleep studies, a polysomnogram. It's a test that helps you diagnose sleep disorders. Now, it involves either spending the night at a sleep lab or sleep center, or you can do it at home. A lot of times there are studies that can be done at home. A lot of times I will recommend for my clients to go to the sleep center for different reasons. But if it has to be done, at home, then it has to be done at home. Basically, polysomnogram just records your breathing, your oxygen levels, your eye movements, your limb movements in your body, heart rate, brain waves through the night. Non-invasive. Don't need an IV, don't need any special medication or anything like that. Your sleep is recorded on video and audio, and the sleep specialist will be able to look at those recordings to see rapid eye movements, limb movements. Oh, it's just fascinating. It's absolutely fascinating. I can say I had one done, and I'm a data geek, so it was fascinating for me. Very easy way to get a sense of what's happening with your sleep tied into circadian rhythms. Yeah, that's that. Now, number 3, lab testing. Here's something big in my practice. Now, I am a specialist in integrative health and lifestyle medicine. So I will say that for me, these are lab tests that I commonly do because it reveals data that is very, very important. Cortisol levels. I always look at cortisol levels. I look at labs that reflect insulin resistance. I look at leptin levels, thyroid levels, and oxidative stress. Huge important thing to look at is oxidative stress markers. I look at nutrient deficiencies. You guys know that vitamin B status, be like boy, for the brain health stuff, super important. So I look at nutrient studies. Magnesium. Magnesium controls over 300 different metabolic actions in the body. Cannot talk about metabolism without looking at magnesium status. And as I said, thyroid, okay? Thyroid being the engine in the body. Want to talk about something else? As I said, I do special lab tests in my practice. Can't speak for anyone else, but I do functional medicine testing because it's just about how your body is functioning. That's why it's called fit and functional for life. It's not just about, living. It's about thriving, right? So I like to look at functional medicine testing. One of the ones I specifically look at is the cortisol awakening response. Now, what is that? Cortisol awakening response. What are those three letters? C-A-R, CAR. How I want you to remember this is you get up, you go out the door, and you start the car. Engine, move. That's what the cortisol awakening response is. It's a discrete and distinct component of the cortisol circadian cycle that is unrelated to the cortisol secretion throughout the day. So the CAR, or cortisol awakening response, represents that momentous rise of cortisol that begins a couple of hours prior to you actually waking up. And it's that additional transient increase up to about 50%. Okay. So when you wake up, light comes into your eye, optic nerve goes to that SCN in the brain, as I described earlier, shuts off melatonin, cortisol kicks in and starts the car, the rise. Okay. That is an independent marker of central biological clock functioning, and it's the overall HPA axis resiliency marker. Period. Stick a fork in it. That is why it's one of the most important tests that I do in my clinical practice and in my coaching work. Okay. That all to say that there are ways to determine how that are indirect and direct markers of what's happening in your body, cellular level, to disrupt or maintain your circadian rhythms. Indirect and direct measurements. All right. I want to talk about some lifestyle strategies before we go, because that's important. We talked about testing, polysomnogram. We talked about the cortisol awakening test, which is I should say this, it's not a blood test, it's a saliva test. We talked about labs. We talked about you keeping your own journal. Let me give you some more lifestyle strategies. You got to get some sleep, guys. You got to get some sleep. The hustle and grind thing is over. Absolutely over. If 2020 did not teach us anything else, it taught us how important our health is. Resilience is so important. You gotta get some sleep. Set a schedule. Go to bed and wake up at the same time each day. Weekends come, you say, I'm going to be up until 3 a.m. or 5 a.m. dancing the night away. Trust me, you are going to pay for that. You want to try to keep as close and as tight a set schedule every night. And this is something that I learned as I've been getting older. I'll tell you, lights are out by a certain hour for me because it disrupts my circadian rhythm, and I am not a happy person when I'm not sleeping and rested. Okay, period. That's it. Lights are out by a certain time, and I get up the next morning and don't even need an alarm clock. I don't even need it anymore because that's how tightly regulated this circadian rhythm of mine is. Got to get some exercise. Get some exercise, but no later than a few hours before going to bed. You don't want to be hitting that, elliptical or whatever it is at 9 o'clock and then trying to get in bed at 9:30. No, because what's going to happen? You've got all of these, fight or flight hormones going, and your body's telling your body that you need to be wide awake. There's no melatonin production if you're going to be running on an elliptical at 9 o'clock and trying to get in bed at 9:30. Not going to work. Okay. So you want to do your exercise, but it's got to be, I personally think at least 3 hours or so before lights out time. Okay. You want to relax. You want to dim those lights, create an environment that is conducive to sleep. Room temperature has to be comfortable. No TVs, computers, cell phones. We've been talking about this, forever and ever. Blue light filters. You want your body to know it's time to relax. Okay. Some people say don't lie in bed awake. If you can't go to sleep, do something else like reading or listening to music. I don't know. Jury is still out on that for me. I personally have a headset. I like the apps. I'm a big Insight Timer user. Some people are Calm or Headspace or whatever. Whatever you use, to me, it really needs to be non-stimulating. So I use as I said, Insight, but I also have some YouTube music that I pump into my ears when I can't fall asleep. It's like deep wave sleep music that hits a certain part of the, certain brain waves that helps me fall asleep. So for me, that's for me. And I would always recommend you do what try certain things. If you like trying the music, do the music, try that out. If not, if reading puts you to sleep, some people, do get to sleep with reading. I don't. My brain gets more activated and then I'm thinking about what I'm reading. So at the end of the day, the bottom line is you want your body to be able to relax. You want to limit that light. That is super important. Out of all of this that we're talking about, you want to limit that light because you don't want light hitting that optic nerve. And next thing you know, you're wide awake and whatnot. Okay. Here's something else that I want to share as well. Limit intake of food. Food is also a stress. It is a circadian rhythm disruptor, okay? That is super important. You don't want to get up and say, oh, I'm going to go downstairs and I'm going to, get myself some milk, or I'm going to get a little cookie or something like that. You don't want to click off that digestive system because, again, that too is going to disrupt circadian rhythm. And let me just say that food intake at a non-natural circadian rhythm phase, i.e. after, certain hours, it alters the release of cortisol. So again, cortisol is going to kick off. You went downstairs, you got something to eat. Next thing you know, here comes cortisol and you're off to the races again. And in summary, basically, it's all about chronic circadian disruptions. And light exposure and food intake are the two known disruptors that can potentially alter the release of those glucocorticoids, which I just mentioned, cortisol. Okay? So I hope that in wrap up, you have an understanding of not only the history of, the science of chronobiology, the history of the research, the science behind what's happening in your brain, that SCN, that's the master circadian rhythm clock, the master clock, and what those hormones are doing in your body as it relates to the circadian rhythm. I talked about them earlier. Leptin, ghrelin, orexin. Okay? So, and also those neurotransmitters in your brain, dopamine, norepinephrine, serotonin, okay? All of this connectedness. All right. I hope you have a better understanding of that. And overall, I hope you understand the role of stress in disrupting this thing called the circadian rhythm. There's going to be more. I want you to get all the more there is in my masterclass, Radical Self-Compassion for Resilient Living. I'm going to be talking about the mind-body science of self-compassion practice. And trust me, it is not self-care. It is not taking a day off. It is not taking a vacation. It is talking about burnout. It is talking about hustle grind. It is talking about when your body and mind are completely depleted. Okay, we're going to be digging deeper into the science, but we're also going to be talking about some mind-body awareness and some strategies to really create a lifestyle of resilience that will carry you through the remainder of this pandemic and certainly just the stress of day-to-day life. I want you in on this masterclass. It is free. It will cost you absolutely nothing but your time. A good friend of mine always says that wisdom never costs you. It always pays you. You're going to spend your time and you're going to invest your time in this masterclass because it will yield you and pay you the results of a more resilient lifestyle. I can guarantee that. I can guarantee you are going to come away with the who, what, how, and the why for resilience. Jump on over to my website, sevahealthgroup.com. Click on the blog. The announcement is there. Get on my mailing list because that's the way to know what's coming out of the Seva Institute and Seva Health Group. Get on my mailing list. The link is on my website. Okay, Healthy House Calls with Angel, the podcast, Healthy House Calls with Angel, the newsletter. And if you want to grow with others who are just as passionate about lifestyle medicine, who want less pills, less surgeries, less, dramatic ways of improving their health, but who really do want to design a healthier lifestyle, a more resilient lifestyle, come on and join this Fit and Functional for Life community. Website, www.getfitandfunctionalforlife.com. Couple of days for free. You can try us out, see if it's for you. Okay, I know you're going to love it. Get connected to our community. Getfitandfunctionalforlife.com. Okay, that's a wrap, folks. I hope you have enjoyed this episode. I want to hear from you. Don't be quiet. Tell me what you like. Tell me what you need more help with. Tell me what you want to know more about in terms of the science. Because your girl here, I love the science. I live and breathe the science. Reading clinical studies is like bedtime reading for me. So I want to hear what you want, especially my folks with the birthdays that end in zeros, my 40s and 50s, my midlifers. I want to hear from you because this is a really tough stage in life. It really is. There's a lot changing. There are a lot of challenges. The hormone imbalances, men, the hormone imbalances. There's a lot going on. So I want to hear from you and I want to hear what you need more of. Okay. That's a wrap, folks. Be well and be good to yourself. And as I always say, never, ever, ever, ever be afraid to be amazing. Take good care. Bye-bye. Thank you for tuning in to Healthy House Calls with Angel. I hope today's episode leaves you feeling inspired, motivated, and empowered to live your best life by applying the practical tools of holistic lifestyle medicine to eat, sleep, move, and live better. Please don't forget to subscribe wherever you receive this podcast. Check in for show notes and share this podcast with friends. If you'd like even more tips in your inbox, subscribe to my newsletter, Healthy House Calls with Angel, by using the link in the show description. Until next time, be well and be good to yourself.